31 years of paying every bill in this house, and it took a bag of groceries to end my marriage. My name is Walter Higbee. I live on Colby Lane in Naperville, Illinois, a quiet street with mature oaks and a homeowners association that cares more about mailbox color than most people care about their marriages. I drive a 2018 Ford F-150, work boots in the back seat, coffee thermos in the cup holder. I spent 34 years as a millwright at a manufacturing plant off Deal Road before I retired last spring, and before that I did whatever it took to keep a roof over my family's head. My wife, Renata, drives a leased BMW X5, the color they call Alpine White, though there's nothing Alpine about DuPage County. We used to be the same kind of people. I just hadn't let myself notice how long it had been since that was true. When I met Renata, she was 26 and working the floor at a department store in the mall on Route 59, going to night school for interior design, drowning under $83,000 in loans from a for-profit art school that promised her a career, and delivered her a stack of envelopes with red ink on them. She was sharp, funny, talked with her hands, could make you feel like the only person in a crowded room. I was 31, a journeyman millwright with overtime hours and a pension already building, and I had watched my own father die with nothing because he never once let anyone help him. I decided I wasn't going to be that man. 6 months before the wedding, I cashed out a chunk of my 401k early, ate the penalty, and paid off every single one of those loans in one sitting at a folding table in my apartment, checkbook open, calculator running. I handed her the confirmation letter at our rehearsal dinner, folded up inside a card with a picture of a lighthouse on the front. She read it twice. Her hands were shaking. "Walter, you didn't have to do this," she said. "I know," I told her. "Now you don't have to carry it into our marriage." That was the last time I ever saw Renata Higbee cry over something I did for her instead of something I didn't. 2 years later, when the plant I was working at got bought out and half the floor got laid off, I kept my job but lost my overtime, right in the same stretch we were closing on the house on Colby Lane. The bank wanted a clean, simple file, so everything went under my name, a loan, the mortgage, the deed, the homeowner's policy. Renata sat across from me at the kitchen table of our old apartment, pen in her hand, tears sliding down her face. "You keep doing this for us," she said. "For us," I said. "Sign it." She signed it. We moved in that October. A year after that, when she landed her first real design job at a firm downtown, $31,000 a year to start, I made my own choice right alongside hers. I turned down a foreman position that would have meant 60-hour weeks and weekend call-ins, and I stayed on the floor, steady shift, home by 4 every day. She was debt-free. She had a career with her name on the door. I figured we'd built something that would hold. I figured a lot of things back then. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here, I'm glad you found your way to me. Stick around, because this story took me 17 years to live and about 10 minutes to tell, and I think you're going to want to hear the whole thing. Go ahead and drop a comment telling me what state you're watching from. I like knowing who's sitting with me tonight. The first 10 years were good. Genuinely good. Our son Marcus was born. Then our daughter Adelaide 2 years later. We grilled out with the neighbors on Colby Lane every Memorial Day, ate at the same pizza place on Ogden Avenue every Friday when nobody felt like cooking, drove up to Wisconsin Dells every August with a cooler of sandwiches and 2 kids arguing in the back seat about whose turn it was to pick the radio station. Then Renata made senior designer, $98,000 a year, her name attached to real commercial projects downtown. That's serious money, unless you start spending it like the well never runs dry. It started small, a leased BMW instead of the paid-off Subaru. Then it was the grocery runs from the specialty market on Route 59, $40 olive oils, imported pasta in paper wrapping, sparkling water in glass bottles that cost more per case than I used to spend feeding the whole family for a week. Then it was weekend trips with her design firm friends, Nashville, Charleston, Napa Instagram photos with captions like she earned this seat at the table. She had. I just also happened to be the reason she never had to think about a mortgage payment while she was earning it. See, my paycheck from the plant was spoken for before it ever hit the account. $2,200 a month on the mortgage. Property taxes twice a year that made my stomach drop. HOA dues, homeowners insurance, the family health plan through my union that covered all four of us without a single gap. Her paycheck, meanwhile, was pure discretionary income, every dollar of it because I was quietly functioning as the entire foundation underneath her. She stopped noticing. Or maybe she stopped caring. I've never been sure which one is worse to live with. The separate accounts came about 4 years into her promotion. I just think it's healthier for a modern couple to have their own financial identity. She told me one night while she was scrolling her phone at the kitchen counter. It's not about you, Walter. Sure, it's not, I said, because that's what I did. I kept the peace, kept the lights on, told myself she was working through something. What I didn't understand yet was what that separation would reveal once the math had nowhere left to hide. Once our money lived in two different places on paper, I could finally see it plainly. I had nothing left over at the end of any given month, not because I mismanaged a thing, but because I was carrying the entire house on my back. She had everything left over because she was carrying nothing at all. It was a Sunday dinner about a year and a half ago that first made something in my chest go cold. Her mother, Carol, a retired dental hygienist from Rockford with opinions sharp enough to floss with, was staying the weekend. Renata's brother Dale was there too. We'd ordered from the Italian place on Washington Street, and I was setting the table when Renata said it, right out loud, not even lowering her voice for the room. Must be nice having a husband who clocks out at 4 and doesn't have to think past dinner. Must be nice letting the woman of the house do the real providing for once. Carol laughed into her wine glass. Dale studied the ceiling fan like it had suddenly become fascinating. I set the last fork down, sat at the table, and passed the bread basket. I thought about the folding table in that old apartment, the lighthouse card, the calculator, the checkbook. I thought about the deed with only my name on it, and the way she'd cried signing it, and I passed the bread. But my kids, that part, still catches me somewhere soft when I let myself sit with it. Marcus is 17, quiet, plays trombone in the marching band, the kind of kid who thinks longer than he talks. Adelaide is 14, sharper than both of us put together, always watching, always doing the math on a room before she says a word. I drove them to school every morning down Deal Road past the Forest Preserve, all the way to their building in the district. I packed their lunches. I sat through every band concert, every basketball game in a cold gym that smelled like floor wax. I cooked most nights, pot roast on Sundays, tacos on Tuesdays, the good grilled cheese with 3 cheeses on nights when everybody needed something simple. And, somewhere in all of that, I started to notice my own children looking at me the way their mother did. One evening in October, Marcus came to me about an audition trip, an honors music program in Nashville, a real opportunity. But it cost $1,100 for the registration and travel. I looked at the calendar. The property tax bill was due in 9 days. Bud, I said, let me sit down this weekend and figure out how we make this work for next month. I want this for you. He nodded, but his shoulders dropped in that specific way 17-year-olds have perfected, the sigh of a kid who's already learned where the disappointment usually comes from. Renata walked in from the garage still in her blazer. She dug into her bag without even sitting down. Credit card on the counter. Here you go, honey. Mom's got it. She looked straight at our son, never once at me. It's too bad only one of your parents actually values what you're good at. Marcus's whole face opened up like a kid on Christmas morning. He hugged her. He left the room. I sat alone at that kitchen table listening to the refrigerator hum and told myself it wasn't a pattern. I told myself a lot of things in that kitchen. I had no idea what was coming. I was still making lunches, still paying the mortgage, still driving down Deal Road every morning with 2 kids half asleep in the back seat, one of whom had recently started asking to be dropped a block from school so his friends wouldn't see the truck. I parked where he asked and watched him walk off without looking back and sat there a minute longer than I needed to before pulling away. I was still the foundation. I just hadn't learned yet that a foundation can hold a house up for 17 years and still be the first thing torn out when the walls finally come down. That part was coming faster than I thought. They say it's never really about the last straw. It's about every single bale that came before it. It was a Tuesday in October. Nothing special about it. No argument the night before, no anniversary on the calendar. Just an ordinary gray Illinois Tuesday, the kind that ends before you even remember it started. I'd put in a full shift on the floor. my knees aching from standing on concrete since 6 that morning, my coffee gone cold in the truck because I never got around to it. I came home, changed out of my work clothes, and walked into the kitchen to put away the one bag of groceries I'd stopped and picked up myself on the way home: bread, a rotisserie chicken, a bag of apples. Nothing fancy. That's it. That's the whole thing. If you told me a grocery bag was going to be the last domino in my marriage, I'd have laughed at you. I set the bag on the counter and started unloading it. Renata walked in, still in her work clothes, laptop bag on her shoulder, and stood in the doorway watching me the way you watch someone doing something mildly irritating, like they're breathing too loud. Then she crossed the kitchen. She picked the loaf of bread up out of my hand, set it back down on the counter harder than it needed to be, and looked at me. You know, Walter, I don't know why you even bother with this anymore. Flat, quiet, no heat in it at all, which somehow made it worse than if she'd been screaming. Buy your own groceries from now on. I am done subsidizing a man who peaked at retirement. The kitchen went completely silent except for the hum of the refrigerator behind her. I stood there, in my kitchen, in my house, on the deed with my name on it, on 31 years of my adult life, and I looked at my wife. I thought about the folding table and the lighthouse card. I thought about the credit card on the counter and Marcus's face lighting up for the wrong parent. I thought about, must be nice having a husband who clocks out at 4. I thought about all of it in about 3 seconds flat. Then I said the only thing I trusted myself to say. Understood. I walked to the garage, sat in my truck in the dark with the engine off, and didn't cry, didn't slam a single thing. I just sat there while something old and worn out finally finished breaking all the way through. When I finally went back inside, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And there's a real difference between those two things. Angry men make noise. Done men make moves. The next morning I was sitting in the office of a family law attorney on Washington Street before 9. Her name was Judith Okafor, mid-50s, 22 years practicing family law in DuPage County, the kind of woman who's heard every version of this story, and still looks at you like yours is the one that matters. I brought a folder. Inside was 17 years of paperwork. I'd quietly gathered the night before: bank statements, the original loan payoff confirmation, the deed with only my name on it, property tax records, the Union Health Plan enrollment covering all 4 of us. 17 years of paper telling a very different story than the one performed on Renata's social media. Judith put her glasses on. She didn't say a word for a long minute. Then she looked up. "Mr. Higbee," she said, "do you have any idea what you're sitting on here?" "I'm starting to," I said. She walked me through it, piece by piece, calm as anything. The house, solely in my name, funded by money I brought into the marriage before Renata ever earned a dollar as my wife, could be moved to an off-market sale with an investment group she worked with regularly. 30-day close, clean. The proceeds would sit in a court-supervised escrow account, credited directly against the $83,000 in premarital debt I'd paid off for her, fully documented, wire-dated, notarized. "That offset argument is about as solid as they come," she said, tapping the old loan confirmation with one finger. "This doesn't get lumped in with a standard split. This has its own lane." Then she asked about the kids. I told her about the school runs, the lunches, the concerts, the block-away drop-offs I never once argued about. I told her about Renata's travel for work, the conference trips to Denver and Austin and Columbus, the 60-hour weeks she posted about like trophies. Judith made a note. "Given your schedule against hers, and the documented history, primary custody is very much on the table," she said. Then she ran the numbers, Illinois state guidelines, both our incomes, support calculated on the gap between them. She turned the screen toward me. I looked at the figure. I kept my face still. Inside, something settled, like a scale finally coming level after 17 years of tipping the wrong direction. "That's what she'll owe you monthly, starting from the court's approval," Judith said. "Per month?" I asked. "Per month," she said. I nodded slowly and closed the folder. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Time," she said, "and the ability to keep everything at home looking completely normal for a few weeks while this moves through the system. Can you manage that?" "I've been managing that for 7 years," I said. "A few more weeks isn't going to break me." She almost smiled. Then let's get started. If you've been with me a while, you already know I don't rush these things, and I don't rush telling them either. Drop a like if you're still here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from tonight. Here's what nobody tells you about running a plan like this quietly. The legal side isn't the hard part. Lawyers handle the legal side. The hard part is going home every night after, and acting like nothing at all has shifted underneath your own house. And I did it. 5 straight weeks without a single crack showing. I drove Marcus and Adelaide to school every morning down Deal Road, same route, same radio station. Marcus always claimed for himself. I cooked 4 nights out of 7. I paid the mortgage on time. I kept the family health plan active and never missed a single premium. I showed up to everything I was invited to, and a couple things I wasn't. Adelaide had a fall choir concert at her school the second week of October. I took a half day, got there early, sat in the 3rd row, and when she spotted me from the risers and gave me the look, the one that says, "Dad, please blend into the wallpaper," I quietly moved back 4 rows without a word. She sang beautifully. I clapped louder than anybody near me. Afterward, she found me by the side doors while her friends hovered a polite distance away, pretending not to watch. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I know," I told her. "You sounded great." "Thanks," she said, and went back to her friends. I drove home in the dark down Deal Road and told myself she'd understand one day. I told myself that enough times that it almost took. Marcus had a marching band invitational the last weekend of October out at a stadium near Rockford. I drove 45 minutes north in the cold, sat in aluminum bleachers with a thermos of gas station coffee, and watched my son play a trombone solo that stopped the whole stadium for 8 bars. I stood up and clapped so hard I dropped my thermos and didn't even care. On the ride home, Marcus had his earbuds in, thumbing through his phone. About 10 minutes in, he pulled one earbud out. "Mom's gonna post the video," he said. "She wasn't there," I said. "The band boosters record everything. She always reposts it." He put the earbud back in. I watched the dark highway, the flat Illinois fields sliding by on both sides, and I said nothing because what was there to say? Your mother is going to take credit for a solo she'll watch for the first time on a phone screen, while your father sat in a metal bleacher in 34-degree weather for 3 hours to hear it live. I just kept driving. Meanwhile, things were moving exactly on schedule on the legal side. By the 3rd week of October, Judith had secured an emergency pre-filing order. Because I was quietly running a structural deficit holding the household together while Renata's discretionary account kept growing untouched, the court authorized a conditional off-market sale to the investment group Judith had lined up. The buyer was locked in. The escrow was established. The petition was signed, and sitting, waiting on my word. I found an apartment the last week of October, a clean 2-bedroom off Aurora Avenue, same school district, same morning route, nothing disrupted for the kids day to day. Good light, quiet building. I put the deposit down on a Wednesday. That evening, while Renata was upstairs on a work call, I packed one bag, slow and quiet, just the things that were mine before any of this ever started: documents, a few personal items, things with my name actually on them. I set it in the hall closet behind the winter coats. Standing there with a duffel bag holding what was left of my own life, I felt something I hadn't expected at all. Not sadness, not rage, relief. The specific, worn-out relief of a man who's finally stopped waiting to be remembered. Renata's 50th birthday landed on November the 9th. She'd planned the whole thing herself. A big dinner, 20-some relatives, a caterer, the works. Her mother Carol was driving down from Rockford. Her brother Dale was coming with his wife. Aunts, cousins, the whole assembly gathering to celebrate her half-century milestone. She mentioned the party to me twice in passing, both times looking at her phone instead of me. I nodded. I told her it sounded like a good time. She had no idea I meant that for reasons that had nothing to do with cake. I had one more thing to prepare. I found a gift box, sturdy, good weight to it, wrapped in deep navy paper with a wide silver ribbon, the kind of wrapping that tells you somebody put real thought into it. Inside was a legal binder, 2 inches thick. I wrapped it myself at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon while Renata was at the outlet mall with Carol. I creased every fold twice. I tied that ribbon 3 times until it sat exactly right. I set it on the closet shelf above my packed bags and just looked at it a minute. Happy birthday, Renata. I want you to understand something before we get to November the 9th. I didn't do what I did out of anger. I was long past angry by then. I did it because a woman stood in my own kitchen, in the house my name was on, and told me to buy my own groceries. So I decided to take her completely at her word. What happens next you're not ready for, but it's coming. Some people wait their whole lives for justice to find them. I scheduled mine for a Saturday evening in November. That day arrived the way all the truly significant ones do, completely unremarkable on the surface. Gray Illinois sky, that flat November light that can't decide if it wants to rain or just sit there. I was up at 6, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window looking out at the backyard, the maple tree Renata had planted the summer we moved in, the deck I'd resealed every other spring without being asked. I built a good life inside this house. I just wasn't the one still living in it, not really, not for a long while. By 10, Renata was in full production. She'd hired a caterer out of Naperville, the kind that shows up in black aprons and sets up chafing dishes without a wasted motion. The dining table was extended full length. Flowers on the island. A banner across the back wall in gold script that said 50 and fabulous, which told you everything you needed to know about the tone of the afternoon. I carried folding chairs up from the basement when asked, smiled at the catering crew, played the part of the normal husband at a normal party. Nobody in that house had any idea it was the last Saturday it would ever be mine. They started arriving around 1. Carol came first, swept in through the front door in a wool coat like she was hosting it herself, kissed her daughter on both cheeks, and started narrating the house to Renata's Aunt Louise, like a real estate listing. Vaulted ceilings in the living room. My daughter picked every single finish in this kitchen herself. I was standing 6 feet away when she said it. I let it go. I'd had 31 years of practice, letting things go. Dale showed up with his wife Priya. Good guy, Dale, the type who finds the nearest other husband at a family gathering and sticks close for survival. He found me within 5 minutes, and we stood near the garage door, talking Bears football with the quiet relief of 2 men who'd located neutral territory. By 2, 20-some people filled the house. The noise climbed. The spread was impressive. A carving station, roasted vegetables, some kind of shrimp thing that smelled incredible. Somebody had ordered a cake from a bakery downtown with Renata's actual headshot printed on the fondant. A cake with your own face on it. I don't know what a person is supposed to say about that. I don't think there's anything to say. Renata moved through the room the way she always did when the room was watching, laughing loud, touching people's forearms, mid-sentence, glowing. Carol trailed 3 steps behind, working the crowd like a hype woman. Did I mention she just landed the design contract for that new office tower downtown? That BMW? She leased that entirely on her own. I watched from the edge of it all, quiet, patient, a man with absolutely nothing left to prove to anybody in that room. Marcus and Adelaide orbited their mother the way they'd been trained to for years. Marcus was near the dining room on his phone. Adelaide sat with a cousin her age by the window. Between the two of them, they'd said maybe 15 words to me all afternoon, which in the recent math of my life was actually above average. The Navy gift box sat on the hallway console table where I'd set it at noon, ribbon facing out. Nobody had asked about it yet. Good things come to those who wait. They sang Happy Birthday at 3:30. The catering crew dimmed the kitchen lights. Somebody lit the candles. Carol stood beside her daughter with her hand pressed to her chest like she was watching a coronation. 20-some people crowded the kitchen doorway, phones lifted, voices rising. I stood at the back and sang along, soft. Happy birthday to you. Renata closed her eyes while they sang, leaned all the way into it, the slight smile, the tilted chin, the hand over the heart. She'd built her whole adult life around moments exactly like this one. Being watched, being celebrated, standing at the center of something. I thought, enjoy this part, Renata. This is the last 30 seconds of the life you think you still have. The song ended. Applause. Somebody called out, speech. She laughed and waved it off with the practiced modesty of a woman who very much wanted to give one. That's when I stepped forward, holding the box. The room noticed before she did 20 people tracking the husband who'd been invisible all afternoon, suddenly walking into the center of the kitchen with something wrapped and heavy in his hands. Dale caught my eye across the room, and something in my face made him lower his drink slowly. Good instincts, Dale. Renata turned and saw the box. She glanced at her mother. A smirk crossed her face, small, involuntary, the kind that comes straight from years of conditioned expectation. Let's see what he managed to pull together. She took the box, held it up for the room a beat, set it down on the island. She pulled the ribbon, she tore the paper, she lifted the lid. The room was still making its small party noises, glasses clinking, someone laughing near the back door. For about 3 full seconds, Renata just stared into the box, processing, her brain doing that thing where it refuses information the eyes have already delivered. Then the color left her face all at once, like someone had pulled a plug behind her eyes. She lifted the top document with 2 fingers like it might scald her, the divorce petition, the primary custody motion, and underneath them, a court order granting me temporary exclusive control of the marital home for the purpose of an approved off-market sale, alongside a signed closing agreement from the buyer already lined up. It wasn't an eviction notice. It was a clock, already ticking, in writing. And sitting right on top of the last section, circled twice in red ink by Judith herself, the monthly support figure the state of Illinois had calculated based on the gap between our 2 incomes. $1,900 a month, payable by Renata, starting the following Friday. The kitchen went dead silent. Then Carol looked over her daughter's shoulder, read just enough to understand, and the kitchen was not silent anymore. Are you serious right now? On her birthday? What is wrong with you? Carol's voice climbed above everything else in the room, sharp and well-practiced, the voice of a woman who'd been sharpening it specifically for men like me her whole adult life. You spiteful, small little man, in front of her whole family? You are a coward, Walter. You have always been a coward. And this just... I turned and looked straight at her. My voice cut through hers clean. Carol, you've spent years bragging about how your daughter does the real providing in this house. Well, now she gets to do it for real. Her first check to me is due Friday. The color drained out of Carol so fast she had to reach out and grab the doorframe to steady herself. I turned away from her. She was out of ammunition. I looked at my children. Marcus had come in from the dining room the second the singing stopped. He stood near the doorway, phone down, dead still, reading the room the way athletes read a field fast, instinctive. Adelaide stood beside him. Her cousin had already disappeared somewhere. She was watching me with an expression I had never once seen on her 14-year-old face. Not embarrassment, not pity, something closer to the very first moment of actually understanding. I looked at both of them and spoke. Not loud. I didn't need loud. The room had gone quiet enough that every word landed exactly where I set it down. For years, you two have been taught to look at me like the boring one, the one who didn't buy your love with a credit card. What your mother never told you is that before either of you were born, I emptied out my own retirement account to pay off $83,000 of her debt, so she could even have the career she's even celebrated for right now. I turned down my own promotion so I could be the parent who was actually here, who cooked your dinners, who sat in a freezing gym and a freezing stadium bleacher for every single game and concert, including the ones you asked me to watch from the back row. Adelaide made a small sound, involuntary. Marcus didn't move, but his jaw tightened in a way that told me the words were landing somewhere real. My paycheck kept the roof over your heads every single month for 17 years, while my account ran dry and hers ran to a leased BMW and imported olive oil neither of us needed. I paused, let it settle, and turned to Renata. She was gripping the edge of the kitchen island, the binder open in front of her. She wasn't crying. She was past crying, standing somewhere beyond it, that hollow place where there's nothing left to perform for. A few weeks ago, right here in this kitchen, you took a loaf of bread out of my hand and told me to buy my own groceries. You said you were done subsidizing me. Short pause. So I did exactly what you told me to. I took my name back out of your life. I sold the house, because it was my house, Renata. It was always mine, and the equity is sitting in court escrow settling the debt you walked into this marriage carrying, the same debt I cleared so you could have the career your mother just spent an hour bragging about. Since your income is so much higher than mine, the state ran the numbers and ordered you to pay me $1,900 a month starting this Friday. Since I have primary custody, the kids are leaving with me right now. The court's already approved the sale and transition of this property. I looked at her one last time. Happy birthday, Renata. I walked down the hallway. My 2 bags were exactly where I'd left them behind the winter coats, packed, zipped, ready. I pulled them out, set them by the front door, and put my coat on. Behind me, the house had turned into a specific kind of chaos. Carol's voice, somebody crying, hushed, urgent conversations breaking out in every corner like small fires catching. The catering crew had gone completely still near the chafing dishes, professional enough not to move, human enough to stare. I stood at the door and waited. 15 seconds. 30. Then footsteps. Marcus came around the corner first, backpack over one shoulder. He didn't say a word, just looked at me, then the door, then back at me, and walked over and stood at my side. Adelaide came around 12 seconds later, jacket half on, one arm still finding its sleeve, eyes red but her chin up. She stopped in front of me. "Dad," she said, and didn't finish the sentence, because she didn't need to. "I know," I said. "Come on." I opened the door. We walked out into the cold November air, the gray Illinois sky, the manicured lawn and quiet cul-de-sac that had watched us come and go for 17 years. I loaded the bags into the truck. The kids climbed in without being asked. I shut the tailgate, stood by the truck a moment, and looked back at the house on Colby Lane one last time. The lights were still on. Through the kitchen window, I could see shapes moving, the blurred aftermath of 20 relatives processing something none of them walked in expecting. Carol pacing, Dale on his phone, the caterers quietly packing up a party that was over. And in the middle of all of it, standing perfectly still at the kitchen island, Renata, alone, holding a legal binder in a house she'd never actually owned, at a party celebrating a version of her life that had just walked out the front door without her. I got in the truck. Marcus had one earbud in, but there was no music playing. Adelaide watched the house through the window until it disappeared behind us. Nobody said anything for a while, and that was fine. We had time now. I started the engine, backed slowly out of the driveway, and pointed the truck toward Aurora Avenue and whatever came next. Halfway down Colby Lane, Adelaide said quietly, almost to the glass, "Dad, the band invitational in Rockford. Were you really there the whole time?" "Every song," I said. She nodded and looked down at her hands. Marcus pulled the earbud out and set it in his lap. Nobody said anything else for a long stretch, and I didn't need them to. I had the steady pension, the health plan, the 2-bedroom with a room for each of them, primary custody, and a court order, and the specific, unshakable peace of a man who finally stopped waiting to be remembered and decided to remind everybody himself. We drove north through the flat gray fields, the sky finally breaking a little over the county line, letting a thin strip of light through for the first time all day. I turned the heater up. For the first time in longer than I could count, everyone in my truck was exactly where they were supposed to be. If this story got to you tonight, you already know somebody like me, a father, a husband, maybe you yourself. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from. And if you want to know what happened 6 weeks later when Renata showed up outside that apartment on Aurora Avenue trying to talk her way back in, tell me below. I'll see you in the next one.